Hello and welcome to the University of California, San Diego School of Global Strategy and Policy. We are here to have our Japan webinar today with the title, How to Sustain Entrepreneurship and Innovation After COVID-19. We are very happy to have two guests today, and I will introduce them momentarily. Let me just give you a little bit more information of where you are and why we're doing what we're doing. GPS was founded 30 years ago at the height of the Japan-US trade war and has since pursued active research and exchange with Japan here in San Diego. A few years back, we then founded JFIT, the Japan Forum for Innovation and Technology, to help us build further ties between Southern California and Japan. And we have reframed the current situation as an opportunity for us to increase the exchange between San Diego and California in general and Japan on interesting topics of the day. We do this every week, so mark your calendars. Every Tuesday, 4:30 going forward, we will continue our webinar series as long as there is interest. And I see there is plenty of interest today, so without further ado, let me introduce my two guests today. Taka and Yuichiro, you want to come online maybe and join me here? Our first guest is Yuichiro Yoshinari, who is Assistant Vice President at Mitsubishi Corporation. And he also is a pivotal figure in the Silicon Valley branch of Mitsubishi Corporation's innovation activities, MLab. And he will tell us all about MLab momentarily. Yuichiro has been in Silicon Valley for almost 4 years now, and he, in addition to running various activities of innovation and so forth, he also has a weekly innovation newsletter called Win YY. Let me just say a little bit before we continue to the next guest. Let me just say a little bit about Mitsubishi Corp, which is a trading company. And you might ask, what is a trading company? It is a unique Japanese sort of setup. About a half a century ago, these companies started literally as being the trading arm of for foreign business of Japanese manufacturing firms. But lately they have morphed into what some people think are fundamentally private equity funds. And none is more innovative than Mitsubishi Corp, which has not only now invested in mines in Australia and LNG gas shipping and extraction in other places. It owns Lawson convenience store chain, and it has a substantial innovation activity set up in California, not all of which is open. Some of it is stealth through some investment funds, but there's also this corporate venture capital arm that Yuichiro Yoshinari will tell us all about. So he will cover the large company aspect of how to survive and sustain innovation after this crisis or with this crisis. And then we have a second speaker in Taka Kiyoizumi, who many of you know as the executive manager of JFIT. In his spare time, Dr. Kiyoizumi is also an angel investor. He holds a medical degree from Keio Medical School. He's a doctor. And after practicing medicine for a while, he decided that it would be a good idea to earn his MBA from Sloan, MIT. And he then moved to California, where he started his own company, which he did very well. He sold it for a little bit more than it cost him to build it. And he is now using the returns to help bio startups in San Diego grow and thrive. Thank you, Taka, for joining us as a speaker today. So with that, let me ask Yuichiro to begin our conversation today. Yuichiro has brought some slides, and so let me hand the mic over to you, and let's hear about MLab.
Okay, let me share my slide first. Can you see my slide? Okay. Okay, let's get started. Thank you very much having me with this session. I'm Yuichiro Yoshinari of Silicon Valley branch of Mitsubishi Corporation Americas, which is a US subsidiary of Mitsubishi Corporation Tokyo. I'm leading innovation activities, especially in very old industry like mining or metals and industrial materials. And also that I'm teaching design thinking as an internal coach in Mitsubishi Corporation that I will touch on a little bit later. Today, I'm going to share our story about the innovation in Silicon Valley and also what's happening in Silicon Valley under COVID-19 situation as a current snapshot. This is my favorite area photo to explain San Francisco Bay Area. We are in Palo Alto, which is 30 miles, which is equal to the 50 kilometers south from the San Francisco downtown. Silicon Valley's history started from Palo Alto and Mountain View because the first Silicon Valley company, the first Silicon Valley company, the Hewlett Packard, founded in Palo Alto in 1939, and the first semiconductor company, Shockley Semiconductor Laboratory, founded in Mountain View in 1956. Just for your reference, Google's headquarters is in Mountain View. Facebook is just next to Palo Alto. The Apple headquarters is Cupertino. Intel is also in Santa Clara. So here is the epicenter of innovation, obviously. So in this slide, I would like to share with you about the mystery of large enterprises. The large enterprises have plenty of resources, scale plus strategy, which may be built by the MBA holders, huge capitals, the rich cash, and excellent people. However, in many cases, they will become non-innovative and non-adaptive to changes in the market. And then finally, they will end their lives. Why? This is absolutely the mystery for their business, actually. To solve this mystery, we believe we need innovation as an organization, especially in large companies. Innovation is required for not only startups or GAFA, that's our strong recognition. Based upon such recognition, we have established Open Innovation Hub called MLab 3.5 years ago in our Silicon Valley branch. MLab was designed as a business platform for Japanese large companies to promote cooperation across cross-industry barriers by different industries. Now we have 12 membership companies, including us. That you can see logo on left bottom. The 7 of 12 are the Mitsubishi Group companies, but 4 of 12 are non-Mitsubishi Group company like Japan Post, Fujifilm, Asahi Kasei, and Intech, which is an IT provider. MLab aims to create a business Cs with flexibility and speed, accelerating to become an insider of Silicon Valley by tangible and intangible contribution to ecosystem. Here is a detail of MLab. We have over 30 people in MLab. We are working with all MLab member companies at the same office. We have experts from all 10 verticals of Mitsubishi Corporation. And we have a 2 hub office in the Silicon Valley and Boston. And we are operating as one team together with our Boston, Houston, Vancouver, and Los Angeles offices. Emerald is also providing innovation training based upon the design thinking to not only Emerald expat people, but also people from Tokyo. As you can see that we had a management level networking and learning event in the last November. They're called Emerald Tokyo Summit as well. Also, we are also networking with other Mitsubishi Corporation global innovation offices like Tel Aviv in Israel and Shenzhen in China mainland. In terms of investment, we invested over 70 million US dollar to venture capitals and startups by Emerald companies until now. Just for your reference, the average of CVC investment is reported as roughly 50 million US dollar. So now we are exceeding this threshold. Here is examples we tried as a proof of concept trials together with the startups. The firstly, AI, that we tried AI technology to predict our business flows. And in the middle, that you can see IoT and edge computing, that we utilized this technology to visualize factory operation and unlock the unused capacity of the factory. Lastly, we tested blockchain technology to confirm that it's a huge potential by applying the real business operations. That's a very interesting the experience for us. Now, I would like to explain what's happening in the Silicon Valley. This slide explains what's currently happening in the financial perspective. As you can see on the left chart, deal volumes recorded high numbers in March and April, but there is an interesting qualitative difference between the March and April. As you can see on the middle chart, the raised amount is significantly dropped in April. This phenomenon can be explained as a trend of a rise of a down round on the right chart. Just to audience who is not so familiar with the startup investment, down round means a financing round to downgrade its valuation from the last round. So it's not a good thing for the startups actually. As a conclusion, the startups in the Silicon Valley looked rushing to secure and maximize the cash in March and April to survive under this uncertain period. This is my last chart, last slide. What's the implication to the Japanese companies? As you know, the Japanese companies are very famous with the cash rich. As you can see in the news on the left-hand side. Of course, there is a controversial discussion whether it is good or bad as a public company, but obviously it will be an advantage to Japanese companies in case you look for investment opportunities under COVID-19 economy. One of likely scenarios under COVID-19 economy is that the companies will consider about their supply chain to adapt another new normal. They may promote vertical integration of a supply chain. If your company is thinking of a vertical integration and there is a good company in a supply chain and you may want to reinforce financial stabilities, you might find a potential opportunity for minority investment in such companies. However, for a minority investment case, it is always a challenge to realize synergies with invested company financially and strategically. To solve this dilemma, the digital transformation and innovation must be key to realize synergies. As a conclusion, the new normal must be the opportunity for Japanese companies, but the Japanese companies' seriousness to digital transformation and innovation will be demanded. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Yoshinari-san. That was outstanding, very interesting. And I'm sure I have lots of questions. Before I turn the microphone over to Kiyoizumi-san, let me just say that if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A button, and I will then moderate the Q&A session. And with that, Sensei, tell us a little bit about what's going on with angel investments in San Diego right now. And again, just like Yoshinari-san, give us the factual situation so that we can then have a conversation about how that's different from Japan and what the implications are.
Well, thank you, Shiede Sensei, for a kind introduction. As I have been an angel investor in San Diego since 2006, the things has been evolved. Of course, the much faster innovation and much more interest in startup companies in general. So I'm a member of Tech Coast Angels here in San Diego. That is a Southern California-based angel investors. When I joined Tech Coast Angels, I think we had about short of 100 members locally. But now, as of last year, we have over 200 members. So that's a lot of interest and a lot of, fortunately, lots of money interested to be invested in startup companies. But however, this COVID-19 situation kind of stopped everything, right? Everybody stopped and think about what's going to happen. There will be lots of uncertainties. And so let me start sharing my slide, what the startup companies are doing. Of course, it's a survival game. Startup is high risk to start with, and but you need to survive under this extreme situation also. And usually when startup companies raise funding, we try to maintain 12 to 18 months operational fund. And however, with this uncertainty, we don't know what's happening in 12 months or 18 months. Is there another opportunity to do fundraising? The market will open, more money coming into the innovation or startup companies. So immediately, startup companies has to do cost cutting and fundraising if it ever possible. As Yoshinari-san said, down round, basically lower value, but if you can raise money, you can survive. So that's why some of the startups are taking down round, fund events. So they need to do cost cutting and fundraising at the same time. And the most important thing we feel is the management leadership. Act quickly, act fast, but maintain the momentum and the work morale of the company. Startup, companies have maybe 5 people, 10 people. Each member of the company is really critical to the job. So the leadership is very important. And fortunately, many experienced leaders went through, 2001, 2008, extreme downturns. So being there, done that kind of experience will be very very significantly useful. And we know the COVID-19 will eventually go away, or effective vaccine will be developed. But until that time, we need to keep going. And as many of you know, the CARES Act, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act became a law on March 27th, 2020. So under that law, there are a lot of provisions. And one of the most applicable or important program for startup is a Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. And that is a 350 billion SBA administered loan. And at certain conditions, the loan will be forgiven. So loan forgiveness is also added benefit. And in order to do that, of course, we need to maintain the employment. Salary cut is okay, but no layoffs or minimum layoffs. And the PPP can be applied from February 15th. That's actually started early, but CARES Act became officially law on March 27th. So after pretty much April, they started distributing the loan. And the startups still can apply for the loan through June 30th. And generally, loans are about 1% interest rate. The law says less than 4%, but the loan the startups getting are 1% interest rate, 2-year terms, and maximum of $10 million. But startups won't get the $10 million. So this program is available, and interestingly, it's pretty fast. One of the portfolio companies, company where I invested, received this loan within 4 weeks. So that's quite fast. And tech cost angels, in addition to, of course, those information sharing, has a campaign called so-called HOPE. Hold on, pain ends. Hold on, pain ends. So HOPE. And tech cost angels as a background, as I mentioned, the San Diego chapter has over 200 people, but the tech cost angels as a whole, almost 500 people in the 5 chapters in Southern California. Collectively, we invested little over $19 million in 52 companies last year. So we have a lot of companies, invested companies. So we immediately strengthened the network of entrepreneurs and the startup companies to assist, how best, they can maintain operational funds, cost cutting, and also potential fundraising. And reached out to the portfolio companies, and we collected all the loan and the grant information in a centralized database, and they have free access to those. And we, tech cost angels, have supporters such as Kunobi Martins and CPA firms, so they can provide professional advice to startup companies as well. And another angel group I'm a member of started having a portfolio reviews, inviting all the startups and get us the update and the real time and the reminding they have opportunity to participate in those companies as well. Again, it's many of them are down round, or it's a convertible note with very preferable terms, or even with warrants. But we believe the key is be bold. So if you stuck with situation, be bold and ask for assistance, and humble and nimble. So leadership, even these conditions are the key. So that's how we see what's going on in angel community and startup company in general. But the deals are done. So unlike operational companies, having a P and L, profit and loss companies, they are immediately affected by numbers. But the startup companies are usually losing money to begin with. So as long as they can build a balance sheet, they are okay, and investors are okay with that. We are patient, and we are kind of betting in the future and the technology and the output. So let me stop there. And back to Shede Sensei. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I hope that viewers can see the three of us now, because I would like to start a little bit of a conversation. And Taka, because we just heard from you last, let me just ask you the first question that is burning on my mind. And that is, how does that differ from what's going on in Japan? So you also work with a lot of biotech startups in Japan. And are they in a similar situation where they can go to their bank and get a program, or are they in a more precarious situation there?
Well, commercial banks in general will not give a loan to startup companies because they too much risk and no collaterals. So startups in general in Japan are more relying on government grant, which can be quite a significant amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the cycle seems to be pretty good because fiscal year starts April, and they passed the budget, and I think beginning of May, so they can appropriate those already carved out funding to the AMED or JST type of a government agency, so that they can distribute the grants. So it's okay, and if they're desperate, still smaller early stage venture capitalists still closing deals. I think it's a down round, but they are still closing the deal. So they are okay. They are okay right now.
So, Yuichiro, let's talk a little bit about larger companies in general before I turn back to what MLab is doing. So what is your sense about large Japanese companies? Are they, R&D is the first thing that, it's a relatively easy thing to cut right away, right? And so it's often the first thing that gets cut. Is that your sense of what's going on? I mean, are the large Japanese companies scratching their heads and kind of scrambling to reduce their innovation activities, or is it more of a wait and see situation right now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's still many Japanese large companies are observing what's happening right now. And maybe that we need to wait a couple of weeks or months or something to see that what's the financial impact to the headquarters. However, the one of the lucky thing for the Japanese company is we just started the fiscal year. So that's a huge change, the difference from the US company, I think. If you would like to dispatch an expert to Silicon Valley, you need to send the people before March. And the Japanese company has just finished such preparation for the Japanese fiscal year, and they secured the budget also. So that maybe the latter half of a fiscal year, maybe some decision will be done. But at this moment, I'm talking with many Japanese companies here. That at this moment there is no change for the first half. So I think that's the one of advantage for the Japanese company, I think.
Well, that's great to know. And my understanding is it's about something like 75% of Japanese companies start their fiscal year on April 1, right? And so the others may be a little bit more concerned, but for those that have just started, there's no reason to change the budget right away, I guess. So the question that's burning on my mind, Yuichiro, which is also a personal research interest of mine, is the topic that you started talking about the new types of innovation in large Japanese companies to ensure their longevity and that they stay at the top of their game. And there's now also new aspects of labor mobility and so on. How do Japanese companies, and in particular your MLab, how do you think about training people, changing them into a new mindset of what it takes to win? Can you talk a little bit more about some of your activities at MLab and how you're trying to change your folks, so to say, to be a more global, open, outcome-oriented, innovative person?
Thank you for your question. Can I share my slide again?
Please do. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So, can you see?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Very
so
good.
the fundamental question about innovation in a large corporation is which is more important between the innovator or innovation. So this is a very typical question which was asked in my company because to bring up and foster innovator it takes a little bit time because it's HR training and we need to bring up the employee for innovator. But the final conclusion or the conclusion at this moment is we should not avoid this effort to foster innovators rather than just focusing on innovation by investing in the startups or something. So we positioned the training of the people to the center of MLab trials initiative, and we would like to emphasize that there is no shortcut for innovation. The human resource development is a quite important thing. So maybe go to next page. We recognize that design thinking is a kind of operating system in Silicon Valley. So this is a kind of the heart of Silicon Valley innovation. So I went to the Stanford D School in 2017, and after that, I'm providing the in-house training as a design thinking evangelist since then. I already had over 30 classes. The accumulated number is exceeding the 1,000 participants. And this activity has been drawn from the senior management with attention. So from the last year, the design thinking has become an official class at the newly established innovation training program by the Mitsubishi Corporation Global HR Department. Last year, we invited 5 classes to the Silicon Valley to give the innovation training for a week under the collaboration with Stanford. So that's what we are doing, how we can change a corporate culture. And this is not just only the HR development, that we are aggressively trying to apply design thinking to change a business itself. And as you can see, this is our self-design thinking camp in New York. And we apply the design thinking to reinvent or change our very conventional business. And finally, we succeeded the user test. It took almost a year, but now we commercialize this service from this April. So to change the culture, to change a business, our belief is how we can change the people's mindset and the corporate culture. That's what we are doing.
Well, thank you very much. And my understanding is that you're not you're possibly the leading, but certainly not the only Japanese company that is doing that in Silicon Valley, right? So I did some interviews with another very large Japanese company that was saying that from the Japanese point of view, Silicon Valley owns the brand for open innovation and change and different methods of thinking and so forth. And so there are lots of Japanese companies that used to fly people out, one employee at the time, introduce them to design thinking and workshops and so forth. I wonder how our current travel restrictions are going to interfere with your program there, though that might be a little bit of a concern, I would assume.
Yeah, so actually we are developing an online program together with Disco. Obviously the online program is not exactly the same as a physical or training. However, we are trying to design the new experience to participants using some digital tool. Obviously that Zoom is one of that, and also that we have a very interesting sticky note tool using the online. And so last week we tested that program the 6 consecutive days for 3 hours to teach design thinking. The team some of come from US, but some of come from Tokyo. And it's a very, very interesting program, the trial, the actual prototype. So at the end, we would like to have the people here, but even under the restricted environment, that we would like to seek our best to provide such kind of training to the people. That's what we are doing right now.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. And we should keep in mind that's what Yoshinari-san is talking about is special in some ways, but also representative of some of the Silicon Valley activities of Japanese companies. So Taka, you have been on both sides for a long time. You know Japan, of course, obviously very well, and you're an investor and an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur in the United States. From your perspective, at this point in time, what are the things that Japanese companies would have to change in particular to sustain their or push further out their innovative drive? And what do you see are the current challenges for Japanese companies compared to challenges at US companies in terms of upholding innovation?
Well, the challenging times show lots of opportunities. That's what I saw in my 30 years in the business. If it's a stable time, less opportunities. But the time it's rocking, then lots of opportunities. So in Japan, I see there's a lot of innovation opportunities within Japan too, domestically too, because we saw, as living in this US, we saw a lot of problems of online application of the certain, government loans and remote working, education. That's by itself, so-called DX. Everybody says DX, right? Digital innovation, digital transformation. That hasn't happened in Japan. As Sheda mentioned a few webinars ago, Japan is a country of technology, but domestically, access to the technology or use of technology is still quite behind, even compared with US. And if you compare with China is way ahead because probably systematically they can apply all the technologies into daily use. So that by itself has a tons of opportunity in innovation. And US and other parts of the world has has gone through those challenges, and some of the technologies developed to overcome those challenges, and immediately applicable. If Japan wants to take those opportunities, immediately applicable. So that's a huge opportunity. Like Mitsubishi, Mitsubishi knows all the technologies in the US, and Mitsubishi knows all the lack of technology in Japan. So there's a great match. So lots of big companies, trading companies, technology companies in Japan can see lots of opportunities moving forward.
So the young entrepreneurs globally should reframe this pandemic as an opportunity.
I think so. So, on the other hand, those innovative companies will have more visibility, because of this pandemic.
So we have a question, the Q&A box is open. So audience, if you have a question, please type it up. We have a question from Robbie about labor mobility and innovation. So lifetime employment is beginning to change. Not so much because people don't like it. It has a lot of advantages. But because there are some constraints there where younger employees no longer want to be married to a company and slave away long hours and that sort of thing. And then companies say in return, well, if you want to switch jobs, we cannot invest in your education anymore. And so there's a lot of rumbling at the ground of what is going to happen to lifetime employment. And the data are clear, labor mobility is up, especially among younger people. And Mitsubishi Corp is one of the places where a lot of people work for a couple of years and then move on to other places. How do you see, both of you, actually, whoever wants to take this, what is the connection between increase in labor mobility and innovation? I mean, it kind of undermines a little bit the old processes of the central R&D lab where everybody was a local employee or long-term employee, but it also increases cross-fertilization, right? So it could go both ways. What's your impression around labor mobility in Japan right now? Yuichiro, you want to go first since I called out your company?
Yes. Obviously, especially in the younger generation, that they are not thinking I will marry with a company. And if you look at some data, maybe they're under 35 years old, the turnover is increasing, and so I think it's the kind of the gradual change in kind of labor culture in Japan, and so obviously the change will continue for decades, I think. But just about the innovation right now is such change is a less impact to the innovation at the largest company, because still the middle management is the long-time worker in a company. So in that sense, open innovation approach is more important for the large corporation, I think. So how we can lower the barrier or wall of the company, and how we can connect each other to find out some overlap area or some potential working area for the innovation. So in the near term, the 3 to 5 years, I think open innovation is very crucial for the Japanese large corporation. That's my thought.
Tucker, do you have any thoughts on this question?
Yes. The human mobility is the key for innovation, across the globe, basically. I have seen in the past 20, 30 years, yes, there are lots of Asian scientists, engineers come to the US. Initially they may work for larger companies, IBM or Qualcomm of the world, but they, after 5-10 years, they started their own company here. So even for Japanese too, I keep, encourage them to consider coming to the US. The technology is portable, right? And the money is portable, funding portable, and but the most important component of the startup is people. So people, you try to get the best people possible. And the inventor, maybe, lots of smart inventors in Japan, but for the management who creates the eventual success of the startup, you should look for, globally, where is the best place? And, Silicon Valley is one, San Diego is one, maybe Boston is one, depending on the technologies. And the people there too, so I think, under the COVID-19, the traveling mobility is, strictly limited, but, everybody started using Zoom. So I think there's a way to start. Then when, travel resumes, we can start, actually people moving to the location and interact to cross-pollinate more.
So of course, many governments around the globe have tried to stem this brain drain of their young folks into California and build an innovation ecosystem, whether that's in Berlin or in Tokyo, or in Fukuoka, or in other places of the world. And so maybe COVID-19 will keep the talent a little bit more local, but as you just said, the technology is not local. Technology is global. So maybe we will also find some new ways of having innovation sort of separate from maybe location clusters. And so that might open a new chapter. So Taka, we have a question around your initiatives with the Tech Coast Angels, which is about sort of a surprise question, because we've heard that it's actually very difficult to get government loans. We had a webinar early on with Kei Shimizu from Japan, who studies these sorts of small business loan situations, and she pointed out that whereas in California, in the United States, it's sometimes very difficult to go to the bank and get the loan, and there was some chaos, and because the United States doesn't have a lot of relationship banking. That in Japan, this was actually much easier because Japan has relationship banking, and if there's a government program, basically all you need to do is go to your local bank and you're good to go. So how did this work? How does this work in California? I mean, do we have a similar thing with relationship banking and sort of mechanisms that ease the administrative hurdles?
Small and mid-sized companies, of course, in Japan, across the world, they need working capital. So they have to have a good relationship with local bank. Local bank is basically the war chest, right? You need to get money, return, repay. That's the cycle, will support your business. But for innovation companies or startup companies, it's not the banking relationship. Working capital is the capital you raised from the round of funding, the Series A or seed round. That's the working capital in the bank. But still, the bank account, checkings account, savings account, whatever, the corporate account has to be there in the local bank. So it's super important to keep the relationship with the local bank. Because when you raise the money, you keep the money in the bank, right? If you raise $2 million, you're not spending all at once. You put in the bank, your local bank, they will process your paycheck, whatnot, daily activities. So the one of the companies I invested applied those PPP loan through his local bank, the bank he uses. And because of the relationship, good relationship between local bank and the local startup companies, he was able to get the PPP loan processed and received within 4 or 5 weeks. That's really fast. for US standpoint. So still local bank relationship is important. It's not for the cash flow matters, but when something happens like this, you have to have a good banking relationship so that you can get the special SBA loan and other preferential treatment to accelerate your business.
I see. So it's actually possible or impossible in both countries. What I'm always a little bit worried about is whether these government activities actually change things. Right? So we've seen in the past that Japan has a lot of funds earmarked for innovation and startup activities, and then a crisis happened, and the funds get hijacked and invested into saving old companies or existing companies, or giving them to a broader sort of finance program for all small firms, not necessarily technology or innovative firms. Do we see a similar thing happening in Japan right now? I mean, there's a lot of money sloshing around. And do we see that this is going maybe into places that are not necessarily innovative? Or are you sort of satisfied that there's actually sufficient funding around for innovative activities to persist? Or in other words, let me just ask this question in a short way. How will COVID-19 affect the trajectory of Japanese innovation going forward in terms of funding? Yuichiro, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, obviously this COVID-19 will change our business practice in any case. And as the Taka-san mentioned that this will be an opportunity not only for the large company, but also startups in US and in Japan, of course. So I think this change is a one way, not that we will not return to the previous world, I think. So the key point is how we can bring back better. And so the innovation is a must to change the world. And so that I believe the importance of innovation will be up, and that we cannot go back to the same normal, I think.
So there's a lot in the news, especially if you read the English language news, but sometimes also the Nikkei, about how Japanese companies are behind, they cannot be so innovative. We don't have GAFA in Japan. When I'm asked that, I usually say that's a good thing. You should feel yourself lucky. It's more broadly set up. But so what is your sense on how many of the large Japanese, if we were to look at the JPX 400, say, so we just look at the largest Japanese companies, how many of them do you think are in good shape in terms of structuring their innovative activity, and how many of them are sort of behind and still sort of head in the sand and sticking with their old practices? So Yuichiro-san, you talked about MLab and you're bringing out first of all, you have 12 companies in your accelerator / incubator / open innovation hub. And so there are all these companies that are here, but there are a lot of Japanese companies that are not doing that. And are we seeing a bifurcation there of the sort of the companies that are staying behind and the ones that are at the cutting edge? And how should we, when we read that Japanese companies cannot be innovative, how should we think about that? It's obviously not true, but how can we get a better grip around that sort of reporting?
Yeah, so in the Japanese culture, there is a harmonized pressure. So maybe all companies looking at the competitors rather than customers. So I think most important thing is that we should focus on more customers. How we can empathize with the customer's mind, how they think, rather than looking at the next door. So I think it's a quite a back to basic approach, but originally the Japanese company is very good at focusing on their customer, and I think we should do, and we should recall what we did in the past.
So we have a final question that I think is really quite interesting. What do you think, Taka, this may be in your bailiwick, but I'll let Yoshinari-san chime in too. Which country will come up with a cure or a vaccination or whatever help for COVID-19? I was on a webinar the other day, and somebody was saying, well, is it China? Is it the United States? Well, we don't know. And I was thinking, well, it could be Germany, it could be Switzerland. It could also be Japan. So what do you think? Which country is going to come up with the first hope of a cure or vaccination on COVID-19? Taka, what do you think?
Well, I need a crystal ball.
Okay.
But I think it's a good thing is the global collaboration is going on. Of course, there's a group of companies, try to do. Pfizer is working with Oxford University, Sanofi, and the GlaxoSmithKline and GSK are making a good effort. And startup companies, Moderna by itself, but at this moment doing it strongly. So I think everybody wins when they are successful, any one of them. But the important thing is, this is opportunity. Many companies are doing a, unique approaches. And offshoot of those approaches, there could be other disease cure, beyond COVID-19. Right now the money is onto COVID-19, but all of a sudden you can cure HIV, or you can cure Ebola or something like that. Those offshoot or side products. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm all for innovation and pushing all the companies be successful.
Great. Well, on that happy note, let me thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Yoshinari-san. Thank you, Kiyozumi-sensei. It was really great to have a conversation with you. And thank you, audience. Next week, we will have a conversation that is actually between me and Professor Steph Haggard. And we will talk about my new book, if I may plug myself, The Business Reinvention of Japan, which will hit the bookshelves pretty soon. And Steph Haggard, my longstanding colleague, will grill me over the content of this book, and also we will extend the message from that book and what it means for South Korea and the Asian economies and trade in Asia in general. And we will then zoom in on June 9th on trade and Japan in particular. So I hope I'll see you all back next week, same time, same place. And thank you for joining today.